We hear in the very last book of the New Testament, of the Christian Bible, a vision from John of heaven. And near the end of that book of Revelation, a vision that described both last week and this week of heaven coming down to meet earth. If only. And then it says that God is going to make his home with mortals, and Jesus says God is going to come and we will make our home with you. Before this time, there were other biblical conceptions of where home was, where God lived. God lived on the top of a mountain, and only Moses could talk to him, and it was believed that God lived physically on that mountain. And then later in the Bible, as people were wandering around the desert, they created an ark for the covenant with God, the Torah, and they carried it around with a big tent called the tabernacle. And God was said to live in the tabernacle, and only priests were allowed to enter the tabernacle and to mediate for us with God. Then people said they wanted kings, and God said it's a bad idea for people to govern other people, but they'll see, give them kings, go ahead. And one king after another loved God, didn't love God, obeyed God, didn't obey God. Their kingdom ended. Then another king came. King David wanted to build a house for God, a temple, and God said, not you. But he let King Solomon, who, by the way, was a vicious king who killed his family and enslaved his own people. So I know you think he's the wise guy, but he was actually historically quite a vicious king. And he told Solomon to build a temple. And so people said, God lives in the temple in Jerusalem. Then that temple got destroyed because people stopped listening to God. Then it got rebuilt by Nehemiah and others. And then it got destroyed again after the life of Jesus in the year 70. So after that time is when we believe John is writing this book about where God lives. He says, you know, God doesn't live in a physical place. God doesn't live in a building. God is everywhere. God is descending upon earth. That would be great, wouldn't it, if that happened? Augustine of Hippo, the famous theologian who lived in the 4th and 5th centuries, wrote, the 3rd and the 4th, the 400s and the 500s, so whatever that is. If I got to know, the 300s and the 400s, I was right, 4th and 5th century. Am I right? Thank you. 4th and 5th century. I had to check with the theologian. Wrote at the early in the 5th century a book called The City of God. It is a very long book with small print. I'm going to summarize it for you. He says there is the city of the world and the city of God. And the city of the world is managed poorly because he has a very, very low opinion of human nature. In his world, God created a beautiful world, and then 2 people managed to upend that for the rest of all creation forever. I don't believe in the doctrine of original sin. I'll tell you why someday. But we'll go with his understanding of human nature, that human nature is corrupted by original sin. And so the problem is we fall in love with ourselves, and we have a love for self with an accompanying lust for domination over others, so that we get to keep what we get to keep, and we get to control what we get to control, and people will believe what we believe. In contrast is the city of God, and the city of God is governed completely by love, and the only love in the city of God is the love of God. And so the way to dwell in the city of God is to be so in love with God that self-love and all the sin that follows from disordered love falls away. Now, he does not believe that this is in some idealized heaven of the future. He believes that it is a mystical city of God living in and amongst us. Now, I read commentaries on this, including by my former dean at my seminary, and he said it's believed that, he meant the church, that the church was the home of God. And Augustine said, no, it's not the church. We'd like to believe it's the church, but he had already seen corruption in the church. So he knew that the church in and of itself was not the home of God. It's a place where you might learn to love God and avoid the disorders of self-love. But nevertheless, It wasn't just the church. It was living in and among all tribes and nations and peoples and languages and cultures and religions. Nevertheless, he had an idea for a city-state that was Christian in nature, like a Christian political state. He wrote about it, wasn't sure it could be pulled off, but said that would be ideal if we could have like a Christian city-state. Well, let's see how that went. In that book, he traces the entire history in the Bible of every time people tried to set up some kind of theocracy. God's in charge. We will listen to God. We'll do whatever God says. And it works for a little while until somebody else wants power, or their wife wants power, or the children want power, and then kaboom. So they never work. Nevertheless, Jean Calvin, the great Protestant reformer, thought, we can do it. He also had a horrible sense of human nature. And so he said if he and other Protestant pastors could escape the Catholics and start a city-state in Geneva, they could create the perfect Christian state. Raise your hand if you think it worked well. See, you know history. So what he and other pastors did is advise the city council, and they came up with a lot of rules, such as you must be Christian, you must attend church. If I thought that worked, I'd try it. Put you in jail. You'd be penalized if you did not come to church. You'd be taxed. They had rules for sexual immorality that was illegal. Think the Scarlet Letter. How did that work for us? Burning witches at the stake, etc. He was kicked out of Geneva in 1538 because people couldn't stand the repression. He worked with his political partners and got back in 1541 and kept up with it. He's not looked upon kindly in history because they used fear and domination. I have no doubt that John Calvin loved God, no doubt at all, and that he wanted other people to love God as well. But when you use control and domination and fear of punishment to control people, what you get are people who are living in fear. Look at Iran in 1979, another attempt at a theocracy with Ayatollah Khomeini. Different religion, same idea. We've gotten immoral. Those Americans have made us so immoral, so we're going to control this society. Separate or no school for girls, black robes on the women, beat them publicly if they don't wear them. Does that sound like God to you? No. Because people are using control and domination and what they believe is the will of God. Now, here's the thing about us. Even when we love God, and I'm sure we do, it can be difficult to discern the will of God, especially in a very divided society. And so, what do? I believe we're seeing that attempt in our country right now with Christian nationalism. And make no mistake, it's a political ideology. It is not a religious instruction. There are people who have deep religious beliefs behind it, but other people are manipulating those ends. I'll give you one symbol to prove to you this, that one of the symbols that is used by this political ideology is automatic weapons in the shape of a cross. Can you imagine Jesus Christ ever letting that be the symbol of the love for which he died? It just doesn't make sense. I'll give you another example. People who are rounding up people that they think shouldn't be in our country, taking them away from their wives or husbands and children, and they're wearing military fatigues even though they are civilian employees, and masks to cover their faces so that people can't identify them. In the city of God, we don't need to cover up because the light of God bears everything. And if you're not ashamed of what you are doing, you show your face. People are hiding because they don't want to be attacked by other people for what they're doing. When we use fear and domination to get universities or employers or governments or the military or anyone to do what we want to do, that's not the city of God. That's the city of the world. So how can we be a citizen here, and how can we be a citizen of God's city. I think we have to listen what Jesus says in his gospel. He says, do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. Nobody can control you if you're not afraid. And the only way to not be afraid, or rather to get over the fear, because let's face it, we're going to be afraid. The only way to get over the fear is to love God so much that you don't care what happens to you. You don't care what happens to your portfolio, or to your job, or to your reputation, or to your church attendance. You don't care. What you care about is that you love God so much, and you want other people to love God and to be relieved of that fear. He says, peace I give to you, my peace I give you. He says it twice, I'm giving it to you. And then he says, I do not give to you as the world gives. I never really understood that sentence, but I think he might mean this. This authority, this mantle that I'm passing on to you is nothing like what happens when the world gives you authority. It's not going to go well at all times. You're going to lose your reputation. You might even go to jail. In his time, you might even be crucified. Bad things might happen to you, but only for a while. But you're going to have the love of God protecting you, and you're going to be residing in the city of God, where it is always light, and nothing can actually harm you. Now, this is very challenging. But for many of you who are so worried and afraid about what's going on, turn that fear around and say, I won't let that instrument of domination control me because I love God. Now, the other thing that happens when we love God is that we then start loving our neighbor, right? Whatever they're doing, we love our neighbor. And that does create a balloon of love and a bubble of love around us. But that replaces this self-love that seeks to control other people for our own profits and ends. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not be afraid. We are at home, and we are with God. Amen.